Yes, thanks so much. And thanks to you, Adrian, for wonderful moderation. I've learned a lot from this panel and, of course, the previous panel as well, but also learned a lot from the questions because I always feel like the questions in itself actually provide some insight on what are the things that are currently outstanding. And also, anyway, what are some of the things that we need to take into account moving forward as well. And so it's almost impossible, of course, to summarize this summit, but I will try to at least reflect on kind of 5 things that I heard coming back on a regular basis. There are more than that, of course, but anyway, I just have to curate a few issues. The first one was the whole discussion, which I think is super interesting that got like, and has been a key discussion of the last year or more, which is, of course, the whole discussion about high quality, high value, and what is needed in order to really be able to address, on the one hand, the current opportunities, but also the current challenges as well. And I think this whole issue of quality, high value, I think is definitely something that I feel like has received more attention recently than before. And perhaps AI is one of the reasons that finally we start to also take this more serious as well. The key question is, of course, who determines the high value? And should we actually take, for instance, as Philip said, to take the SDGs as kind of the area to define what should be high value and so on. So that's the first kind of cluster of issues that I thought was very interesting to take stock. The second one was really about this notion of common services, but also the data commons, shared services. I think what Chris was referring to is that we're not going to scale if we actually don't start thinking about common infrastructures, common services, data commons, common standards, and how do we actually make sure that we have this kind of, that we prevent lack of fragmentation, which might lead to actually lack of resources in an already resource constrained environment. Second, the third one was to really about asymmetries, notions of lack of inclusion in the data, lack of inclusion in actually the kind of new services, and also then the role of institutions like NSOs to actually make sure that there is equity in data, but also responsibility. And then the fourth one was really about this data governance question, that we need to really invest in data governance. And then the question, of course, what's the role of human rights in all of that? And then lastly, I think what for me rang really true was the need for taking not just an open data, but a data ecosystem approach to really thinking about what is the data ecosystem that we need, what's the kind of collaboration that we need, and so on. And so with that, I think the whole effort of this annual summit is to actually really bring the ecosystem to the table, reflect on where we are in terms of open data, in terms of open data policy. And that's why I'm extremely grateful for all of you to show up and to also still be part of that ecosystem, despite the fact that some of the challenges have indeed, as Philip also said, become more complex than ever before. And so let me conclude with a reflection on the weather forecast that we started with. Anyway, is this a data winter? Are we seeing spring of hope? I think my sense is that it's cloudy with a potential and a chance for rain, but also a chance for sunshine. And so it leaves me somewhat optimistic that at least we are moving in the right direction, but also that we really need to ramp up our efforts. Otherwise, it might become more cloudy and we might have more rain along the way as well. So thanks everyone for joining. Feel free to reach out if you have other questions or other suggestions. And I hope that we don't have to wait another year before we talk to each other, but that we can establish exactly those collaborations and the data ecosystem that we need to address the challenges of today's society as well. Thanks, everyone, and be in touch. Take care. Bye-bye.